Hi everyone, Serena here, aka Woolly Nomad. And from the onset, I would like to apologize for any sound issues you might find. In this video, I'm trying out a new microphone. My other one broke. So let's see what happens and whether this is any good. Right, so today we are going to be looking at how to put in an afterthought heel where we haven't got any waste yarn. So we've knit up our sausage or our snake, sock snake. We cast on and we just kept on knitting, and now we're like, okay, where do we put the heel? And you might do this because you've overshot and you've knit up too many rows and you didn't realize it because you were like at the cinema or you were just watching telly and you just didn't keep track. Happens. And then you're like, oh no, I've done this many more and I need to put the heel in here somewhere. Okay. Or it might just be that you decided, I'm just going to knit the whole thing up and I'm not going to worry about the heel yet, and then later on I'm going to pop it in. And I like to do that because it's kind of really quite therapeutic to just, you know, knit round and round and round and round. So anyway, let me just show you my little progress keeper. It's one I got from Hay on Wye when I went down there with my sister. They've got a little yarn shop there. I think it's near the Castle Printers or Castle, somewhere there anyway, in that area. And it's mainly a book area in the UK, Hay on Wye. There's like, they have book festivals and things. So we went down for that, but they do have a little yarn shop there. And I don't know if they have more, but they definitely have one. And they do a range of yarns and stitch markers. And I bought some nice yarn from them as well, because I do like to buy souvenir yarn. Yeah, so that's quite nice. Now, how are we going to do this? So we've knit up our sock and we're like, oh God, where do we put the heel so it works? Right, there's a couple of options. You might be following a pattern, and if you are, you might have a stitch count that you've ignored because you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to carry on knitting. And in that case, you might have put a marker in here somewhere and maybe not. So if you've got a stitch count from the toe to where the heel should be, then just count your stitches, right? Yeah, and that's going to be where you put your heel. Now, if you don't have a stitch count, you could use a sock you've already knit up, or a sock you've got that's commercial maybe even, but it's got a heel in the right place. So what you would do is, you would just marry up your sock like so. And then you'd be like, yeah, okay, it's going to go here. And then you'd mark that. Okay, so that's another option. The other option, if you don't have a sock and you're not confident with a commercial sock because you're just not sure where it's going to hang. I mean, the thing is, this is very similar to this sock. It's the same kind of wool, yarn. It's knit up in the same way. So I can very confidently say that that is going to be where the heel is. But, and this fits me, this sock does. But on the other hand, you know, you might not have a sock. You might be someone new to knitting, or maybe you just don't have a sock that you're happy with in terms of heel. So the other thing to do is to draw a nice outline of your foot, like so. Right, so what you do is you just get some paper, place your foot on the paper and draw an outline. And kind of get it as close as you can to your foot. And as you can see, I've got kind of a knobbly foot here, but that's okay. They're very good for standing on and doing stuff, all right? Oh yeah, and then what you also do is while you're standing on the bit of paper, you kind of mark down from where your ankle bone is on both sides. So my ankle bone is there when I'm standing. So I'm marking it like this, downwards. And I'm popping in those two markers, yeah. And now if I marry that up to my sock that I've previously knit, you will find that my sock is slightly longer. And the reason for that is that I always like to have a loose sock. So I don't like tight socks. So I always add in a couple of rows anyway. So at this point now, when you've, you know, measured, well, got your footprint there on the paper, you can now decide, do I want a tight fitting sock? So obviously if something is going to be like that, it's going to be tighter because that's your actual foot. So it's going to be a tighter fit. But then what you can do is you can add a couple of rows to it. So I always add a couple of rows anyway. So I've got probably 2 or 3 rows here extra. And that's a good fit for me. So what I would say is at this point now you can think, okay, I want it tight, so it's going to be from here to here. Or you could think I want it slightly looser, so I'm going to give it a couple more rows. So that's totally up to you and what you decide. Right, when you've decided that, then you get your sock and you marry it up to whatever. So this kind of grid paper is quite good actually, because you can see, you know, you've got this line, so you can see exactly where that is, and then this is sort of in the middle here. See exactly where that is. Now at this point you're going to need a darning needle and a bit of yarn, and what I suggest is having yarn that's quite a different color and even maybe a different consistency. Right, so this is a DK yarn actually. Right, now I did cut some bits off it. What's it called? Right, here we go. So what we need is we need one at one side of the row and one at the other. We kind of need it to be the same row as well, and if we make a mistake we can always move our marker, so it's not a problem. So I'm just going to, right, so I'm thinking this green line is where it's going to be. So I'm not going to tie the marker yet, I'm just going to leave it loose, and I'm going to put the other one in now for the other side. Now the thing is, I don't have to measure the other side from here actually. I mean you can, because there might be a slight discrepancy between the two. I mean this looks like it's on this line, so there is a little tiny bit of discrepancy, so it's totally up to you. What I'm going to do is, I've decided I've got this line, so I'm just going to travel this line along like this with my needle, and beware of color change of course if you're doing variegated, and then I'm going to just pick up that stitch and then I'm going to pop in the marker. There you go. Oh, Bobbles, what are you doing? We've got another little cat in the garden. Cute little cat. Right, so now we've got a kind of an idea, or quite a good idea actually, of where our heel is going to go. Now we need to make sure we've got the right amount of stitches for the heel, and also that it's at the right angle. Now what we don't want to do necessarily is put a heel in like this or sort of like this, you know, because then it's not going to be, so you don't want to start here and end here, because then it's going to be a kind of a wonky sock. So to make sure you've got a nice straight sock, make sure it's like nice and straight. And you know, you could even, if you wanted to, you know, steam it a little bit so that it gets a little bit flat. Right, okay. Now next thing, I now need to first of all put my needles in before I do any cutting. So you can use the little circulars, you know, the 40 centimeter cable circulars. And I've got a 2.25 needle, and they're the Zings, and these are my kind of faves. These and the Addies, I like these. Or you can use an actual circular needle with more of a cable. And you know, so what you would do is with a one circular needle, you would put in one needle on one row and the other on the other, like this. With these guys, you would put in like this, one from each. Yeah, one from each like this, and I'm going to use these. Yeah. Right, so the first thing to do is, now that line is where the heel is going to go, so we need to pick up stitches from the two lines on either side of it. So we don't want to pick up any stitches from that line. It's got to be from this the top or the bottom line, or row is what it's called actually. So just angle your needle and pick up, I would say, the same stitch on each side. So I'm going for the left. There we go, like so. And then, I mean, I haven't counted how many stitches, I'm just winging it at this point. But once I've got some stitches on the needle, I'll start counting then, I think. And then I can adjust where my marker is. Right, so that's the first needle, and I'm going to just do that all the way to the end, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the next needle. So I should have 36 stitches on this needle. So let me just count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, and I've got 36 exactly. Now if I didn't have 36 exactly, let's say I had 34, I would pick up one more stitch from either side. Or if I had too many, I'd drop ones where I felt the knitting was becoming uneven. So for instance, if I had an extra stitch on this side and I thought actually that's kind of twisting, then I'd drop it. Right, yeah, so that's quite good. Anyway, maybe that's the sign of a pro. I mean, who knows? Right, so then the other side, right, you want to kind of pick up the parallel stitch. So that one I feel is parallel to that. And again, I'm going for the left leg, is what it's called, isn't it? It's called a leg. Because there's two of them. I expect if there was one, it would be called an eye or something like that. No, I mean, you get two eyes as well. Maybe it'd be called a nose if there was two of them. Right, again, going for the left one, not the right one. Yeah. Okay, anyway, as you can see, this is a tedious thing. I will meet you here. Yeah, and that's quite nice, isn't it? So now we're going to need some scissors, and this is daunting if you haven't cut your knitting before. But rest assured, nothing is going to fall off because you've picked up the surrounding stitches, and the only stitches that are going to come apart are the ones that you take apart. So what I recommend first is to put your hand into the knitting so that you can hold it from the back, and then pull one of those stitches from the middle, like so. Pull it out. Then with your scissors, make a cut. Yeah. No, we've cut our knitting. Okay, and then what you do is you just literally are pulling it out. So you're going to pull it out onto both sides. So this is one side you're pulling, and just with your darning needle. So there we are. Just going to pull all that out from that side. Oops. Oh dear. Right, okay, so you just go right to the end and to that stitch that's in between those two stitches. Now the reason I don't want to cut it is because I want to sew this in later. So if it splits, it's a bit annoying, but at the same time, and it's kind of split here because of this actually, which has gone through it. And that's where our stitch marker is. Right, so that's where our stitch marker is. So we're just going to pull that stitch marker out. We don't need it anymore. And get that last stitch up. So it was, I think it was splitting because of that. So that's the stitch we've picked up. And that's the last stitch, so I'm going to leave that there. Can you see these stitches are on either side of that stitch, so leave that stitch on. There we go, and that can go in there. And now we're going to pull out the other side, like so. And you know, take your time doing this. You don't have to be in a rush, really. Unless you are in a rush. Maybe you're doing this and then, you know, you're at work and it's a sneaky, oh, let's just pop in the you know, let's pop in the needles for our afterthought here. And it's a bit of an under your desk type thing. But you know, knitting relaxes you, so you know, there's nothing wrong with taking it to work, I think. But probably not knitting on the boss's time. Unless you can like say, oh, you know, that I need that for my, you know, well-being. Even then, they'd probably allocate you like a time, like, okay, you can have 15 minutes extra for knitting. You know, I mean, that should be a thing, really, shouldn't it? Should at least get an extra 15-minute break so you can do a bit of knitting now and then. Yeah, sorry. Don't see what Bubbles is doing. He's a bit naughty at the moment. He likes to jump the fences, and you know he's a house cat. But he does have a garden area, and you know, he gets to go, you know, obviously I have to supervise, but then he gets to play and stuff on the grass and eat grass and that. So even though he's a house cat, he does have the run of the garden as well, in bits and bobs, you know. So I have to be careful, because we have other cats as well, and we've got foxes and hedgehogs and squirrels and toads, all sorts of things in the garden that Bubbles probably will chase, or they will chase him, one or the other. Right, so I can pull out that pull that out now, the marker, and there we are. Now what I do need to do is to count, so there we go, so there's the stitch in between those two first stitches I picked up, so I'm going to leave that. That's there, and that can go in. Right, so there we are, and then what we just do is, oops, we just count how many stitches we've got, make sure we've got 36 on the other side as well. And if you haven't, I mean, you will have, because you know, if this stitch is in between these two, then like as not, you are going to have 36 on the other side. But I'm going to count them anyway, just to make sure. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, and there. Voila. Right, so that is how you create the opening for the afterthought heel, I suppose. Anyway, I will see you on Friday.